A devoted nanny's heart shatters in Greenwood Elementary's sunlit courtyard, tears streaming as she clutches her little girl's backpack, her own child brutally shamed and punished by a cruel principal after years of selfless care for others' families. Across the street, Farhan al-Karim, wise Arab millionaire of iron resolve, halts dead, his soul igniting like thunder, striding through school buses with silent fury to shield the loyal woman who's been family to his home. Precious elders, remember when life's quiet heroes faced bullies, only for true justice to roar? In that golden schoolyard amid frozen teachers and hopeful children, one man's moral thunder crushes injustice, proving wealth's sacred duty is guarding the innocent, echoing the timeless battles we all fought and won. Arab millionaire confronts school injustice after seeing his nanny crying over her child. It starts on a bright, crisp morning outside Greenwood Elementary, sunlight reflecting off polished windows and school buses lined up in neat rows. Amal Hassan, the devoted nanny of the Al-Karim household, stood near the school entrance, shoulders shaking, tears slipping unnoticed down her cheeks as she clutched her daughter's backpack. Something had happened inside, something unjust, cruel, and unforgivable. She had spent years dedicating herself to raising other people's children with care, yet here, in the very place meant to nurture and protect, her own child had been humiliated by the principal in front of classmates, punished unfairly for an incident entirely beyond her control. Watching from across the street, Farhan al-Karim, Arab millionaire and employer of Amal, paused mid-step, the morning sun glinting off the tailored lines of his suit. He had always believed that wealth and power came with responsibility, that authority should be exercised with fairness and respect. But seeing Amal, someone who had cared for his family for years, crying helplessly over her child ignited something deep within him. In that moment, he understood that no fortune, no mansion, and no empire could excuse injustice. He crossed the street with measured steps, each footfall deliberate, radiating a presence that commanded attention without a word. Amal looked up, startled, seeing her employer, usually calm, composed, and commanding, now approaching with an intensity she had never seen, a protective force in human form. Farhan's eyes scanned the school entrance, the teachers, and the principal's office, registering every detail. The small gestures of students, the anxious posture of staff, and most importantly, the injustice that had befallen a child. He didn't need an explanation. He had seen enough in Amal's face to understand. A man of immense wealth and influence, Farhan's power was about to extend beyond business empires and luxury. It was about to protect dignity, confront wrongdoing, and demand justice for those who could not fight alone. And as the morning bell rang and students poured into classrooms, the stage was set. The authority of a billionaire would clash with the rigid, unjust power of a principal, and the result would be a reckoning no one in that sunlit schoolyard would forget. The sunlight spilled across the school courtyard, reflecting off the red brick walls and playground equipment, turning ordinary morning chaos into a tableau of tension. Amal Hassan, still trembling from the confrontation inside, stood near the steps, her daughter clinging to her side, clutching her backpack as if it were a shield. Farhan al-Karim, Arab millionaire and protector of those he valued, approached with steady, deliberate steps, the tailored lines of his suit immaculate, yet his presence radiating quiet intensity that silenced murmurs and drew glances from teachers and students alike. The principal, a rigid man named Gregory Daniels, spotted Farhan and straightened instantly, sensing authority beyond the ordinary. A man accustomed to commanding empires, whose influence extended far beyond the school gates. Farhan stopped a few feet from Amal, crouched slightly to meet her eye level, and said in a measured voice, "Tell me what happened." Amal's voice trembled as she recounted the events. Her daughter accused falsely of misbehavior, humiliated in front of peers, and unfairly punished by a principal who had let pride and rigidity override judgment. Farhan listened carefully, each detail intensifying the sense of injustice in his chest. His gaze swept the playground, taking in the students' nervous glances and the staff's uneasy expressions. He stood slowly, towering over the principal yet speaking without anger, each word deliberate, cutting through the tense morning air. "Mr. Daniels," he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of unmistakable authority. "A child has been wronged, and a caregiver, someone who has dedicated herself to raising others' children with care, is here in tears because of your negligence. This will not stand." The principal's mouth opened, words faltering, as he sensed the full weight of Farhan's presence. "Mr. Al-Karim, he began, but Farhan held up a hand, silencing him effortlessly. "I am not here to negotiate. I am here to ensure justice is done. Your actions yesterday have consequences, and I expect immediate resolution. Dignity cannot be ignored, and authority must be exercised responsibly." Teachers and staff, who had witnessed the scene from the sidelines, exchanged looks of shock and awe, recognizing a rare confrontation where wealth, influence, and moral courage converged with precise clarity. Amal, standing close to her daughter, felt a protective shield she could never provide herself, the kind that only a man like Farhan, someone who had built empires yet never forgotten the value of justice, could deliver. Farhan turned to the principal one last time, voice unwavering. "Rectify the situation immediately. Apologize to the child, correct the record, and ensure no harm comes to her or any other student under your supervision again. If you fail to do so, consequences will extend beyond this school and into every arena where authority is tested." The principal swallowed hard, nodding with reluctant compliance, realizing that he faced not a simple parent, but a man whose reach and influence were absolute, yet wielded with deliberate ethical force. Amal exhaled, tears still glistening but mingled now with relief and gratitude, as her daughter squeezed her hand tightly, the fear of humiliation dissipating under the shadow of true protection. Farhan's gaze softened as he looked down at them both, understanding that justice had been served not through anger or intimidation, but through the quiet, commanding authority of someone who knew how to wield power for the right reasons. And as the sun climbed higher, illuminating the courtyard and every small detail of the confrontation, it became clear: a billionaire's influence, when guided by morality and courage, could turn fear into dignity, helplessness into protection, and injustice into a lesson that would resonate far beyond the walls of a single school. The sunlight now poured fully into the school corridors, reflecting off polished floors and the bright walls decorated with colorful student artwork. Amal Hassan moved with her daughter at her side, the earlier tension still palpable but slowly dissipating. Teachers who had witnessed the morning confrontation whispered quietly among themselves, some exchanging glances that mixed fear with newfound respect, realizing that the Arab millionaire's presence had shifted the entire atmosphere. Farhan al-Karim, standing near the principal's office, observed the subtle changes, noting how authority was being redefined in real time. This was not a display of wealth or intimidation, it was a demonstration of ethical power, of a man using influence to protect the vulnerable and uphold justice. Amal's daughter, initially timid and withdrawn, now held her head high, encouraged by the visible support of someone whose moral authority could not be ignored. Farhan's gaze swept across the staff, silently conveying that negligence, cruelty, or misuse of power would not go unnoticed when he was involved. He understood the broader lesson: those in positions of authority, whether in a school, a company, or a society, are accountable not only to rules but to morality, and ethical action must always be enforced. Within the classroom, whispers of the billionaire's intervention reached students, some of whom had witnessed their peers' humiliation. Respect replaced the earlier teasing, and a quiet recognition emerged that fairness and integrity could be defended even against powerful institutions. Amal, meanwhile, felt a profound shift inside herself, the helplessness she had carried for years, as a caregiver balancing her own struggles with the weight of responsibility for other children, had been met with protection and acknowledgement. Farhan approached her quietly, his voice low yet deliberate. "You have shown courage, Amal. You protected your child even in the face of authority that failed you. That courage deserves recognition." She nodded, words failing, as gratitude and relief washed over her. Her daughter, sensing the shift in energy, leaned into her embrace, no longer afraid, the sting of injustice softened by the ethical force standing beside them. Outside, the morning sun illuminated the playground, the laughter of children echoing as the world continued unaware of the monumental lesson unfolding inside. That true power, when wielded with morality and courage, could protect the innocent, correct wrongs, and inspire ethical conduct even among those who had once held unchecked authority. Farhan's presence lingered not as intimidation but as an invisible standard, a reminder that wealth and influence carry responsibility, and that those who act without consideration of justice ultimately face reckoning when confronted by moral courage. By mid-morning, the principal, Gregory Daniels, had begun implementing corrective measures, personal apologies, policy reviews, and a quiet acknowledgement to staff that the Arab millionaire's oversight demanded accountability and fairness. Amal, standing a step apart from him, felt a sense of justice not only for her child but for every student who might face similar treatment in the future. Farhan's eyes, calm yet piercing, swept the corridors one last time before he left, leaving behind a lasting impression. A demonstration that courage, compassion, and the ethical application of power can transform fear into dignity and injustice into a lesson that reverberates far beyond the immediate moment. The afternoon sun streamed through the school windows, casting long, warm streaks across the hallways and classrooms. The atmosphere was subtly transformed. The air itself seemed lighter, charged with the quiet knowledge that a wrong had been righted. Amal Hassan moved among the classrooms, her daughter at her side, noticing how teachers now treated them with a mixture of respect and cautious deference. Even students seemed to sense the shift, their whispers subdued, their teasing replaced by curiosity and admiration. Farhan al-Karim, the Arab millionaire whose intervention had set this change in motion, had departed the immediate scene, but his influence lingered like an invisible force. Staff members who had once wielded authority carelessly now operated with mindfulness, aware that their actions could be observed, scrutinized, and corrected by someone whose ethical standards transcended wealth and status. Amal paused outside her daughter's classroom, watching her child unpack her things with a quiet confidence, her shoulders no longer slumped, her eyes bright with relief. Farhan's presence had reminded her, in a tangible way, that integrity and courage do not go unnoticed, and that even those with modest means can inspire change when met with the right kind of power. Elsewhere in the school, the principal, Gregory Daniels, worked diligently to implement reforms. Apologies were made, records corrected, and policies reviewed to ensure no child would face such humiliation again. His demeanor had shifted, his posture subdued, now tempered by the awareness that ethical oversight can arrive from unexpected quarters, and that wealth and influence, when guided by morality, carry the power to enforce fairness. Amal walked through the courtyard, sunlight glinting off the playground equipment, and she felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and gratitude. She had faced injustice, yet it had been met with intervention that recognized not just the wrongdoing but the value of her courage, her dignity, and her unwavering care for her child. Farhan, though no longer physically present, had set in motion a ripple effect that would extend far beyond a single day. A reminder to staff, students, and parents that morality matters, that protection of the vulnerable is a responsibility of those with power, and that the smallest acts of courage, like Amal standing up for her child, deserve recognition and defense. By late afternoon, the corridors buzzed quietly with a sense of restored balance. Children laughed freely, teachers moved with renewed purpose, and Amal held her daughter's hand tightly, feeling the weight of fear lift and the warmth of justice settle around her. She knew this was more than a personal victory. It was a statement, a living proof that the ethical use of power can safeguard dignity, correct wrongs, and transform a community, one courageous act at a time. Outside, the city continued in its relentless rhythm, oblivious to the moral lesson unfolding within the walls of Greenwood Elementary. Yet the impact of one billionaire's intervention would resonate silently but indelibly, a reminder that true power is exercised in defense of what is right, not simply for wealth, prestige, or control. The golden late afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Greenwood Elementary, casting long reflections across the polished floors and colorful classroom walls. The once tense air had softened, replaced with a subtle hum of respect and vigilance. Amal Hassan moved steadily, her daughter walking beside her with a newfound confidence, both of them carrying the quiet pride of having justice restored. Staff who had previously dismissed her or overlooked the weight of her words now approached with careful respect, their tone tempered by the awareness that an Arab millionaire had witnessed the injustice firsthand, and that his influence extended far beyond the walls of the school. Farhan al-Karim had departed the scene hours earlier, yet his presence lingered like a moral compass, guiding behavior and commanding ethical conduct without uttering a single word. In classrooms, teachers adjusted their tone, becoming more patient, more attentive, realizing that authority without compassion can be silently challenged and morally judged by those who wield true power. Amal's daughter unpacked her backpack, her eyes shining as she glanced up at her mother, the anxiety of humiliation replaced by pride in her mother's courage and the protection it had drawn. Amal herself felt a profound transformation, a realization that courage and morality could intersect with power to reshape not only personal outcomes but institutional behavior. Across town, whispers of Farhan's intervention traveled quietly through networks of parents, teachers, and community members, reinforcing a narrative that wealth, influence, and authority could be exercised with justice, compassion, and moral clarity. Farhan, observing from a distance, understood the significance. While he had acted swiftly to protect Amal and her child, the broader lesson, the ripple effect, was now taking hold. Students were learning that injustice could be challenged, staff were recalibrating their approach to authority, and Amal had found in herself a renewed confidence that transcended the momentary relief of job security. As the school day drew to a close, sunlight bathing the courtyard in a warm glow, Amal and her daughter paused, taking a deep breath together. The world outside moved on in its usual chaos, yet within the confines of the school, a transformation had quietly taken root. Farhan's intervention had ensured that fear became respect, injustice became correction, and courage met with power became an enduring lesson in human dignity. Amal, holding her daughter's hand, smiled softly, knowing that the intersection of integrity, compassion, and ethical influence had not only protected her child but had sown the seeds of lasting change, both within the school and within herself. And far above the city, Farhan, from his penthouse overlooking the skyline, reflected silently that the truest exercise of wealth and influence is not the accumulation of riches, but the unwavering commitment to use power for justice, protection, and the elevation of human dignity wherever it is threatened. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of Greenwood Elementary, illuminating every corner of the courtyard and classrooms with a golden warmth that seemed almost symbolic of justice restored. Amal Hassan walked through the halls, her daughter at her side, noticing subtle changes everywhere: the teacher's careful tone, the respectful nods from staff, the quiet hum of students moving without fear or tension. Farhan al-Karim, the Arab millionaire whose intervention had set this transformation in motion, returned to the school, not to assert authority, but to witness the lasting impact of moral courage intersecting with influence. As he entered the courtyard, eyes scanning the space, he saw Amal's daughter laughing freely with classmates, her shoulders no longer weighed down by fear. Amal herself stood taller, her expression a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet gratitude, knowing that her courage in standing up for her child had been met with protection and recognition. Farhan approached her, voice calm yet deliberate, carrying the weight of ethical authority. "You acted with integrity," he said. "You protected your child, and in doing so, reminded everyone here that morality cannot be silenced, even by those who hold institutional power." The principal, Gregory Daniels, emerged from his office, humbled and subdued, offering a sincere apology to both mother and child, acknowledging that authority untempered by justice is meaningless. The air around the school felt different, lighter, charged with the invisible lesson that ethical action has consequences, and that courage combined with moral oversight can transform fear into dignity. Outside, the sunlight reflected off puddles from a light morning drizzle, creating shimmering patterns that seemed to mirror the subtle ripples of justice spreading throughout the school. Farhan, observing silently, understood that influence is most meaningful when wielded to protect the vulnerable, correct wrongs, and uphold human dignity. Amal, holding her daughter's hand, looked up at him with a mixture of awe and gratitude, realizing that while wealth could never shield her from life's challenges entirely, moral courage paired with ethical power could create extraordinary outcomes. As the day progressed, students moved freely through the halls, teachers engaged with renewed attention and patience, and Amal carried a quiet confidence she had never known before. The ripple effects of the intervention extended far beyond a single incident, embedding lessons of fairness, respect, and the ethical use of authority into the very fabric of the school. True power is measured not by wealth or prestige, but by the courage to protect the vulnerable, uphold integrity, and enforce justice. Even the smallest acts of compassion, when recognized by ethical authority, can transform fear into respect, humiliation into dignity, and injustice into a lasting lesson. Wealth becomes meaningful only when it serves humanity, and influence is most profound when it protects those who cannot defend themselves. When courage meets moral oversight, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the smallest acts of righteousness ripple outward to reshape lives forever.